So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's seminar titled Factoring RSA 250 with Praise. Our speaker today is Professor Paul Zimmermann, who received his PhD in computer science at École Polytechnique and is a computational mathematician and research fellow at INRIA. His interests include asymptotically fast arithmetic. He has developed some of the fastest available code for manipulating polynomials and for calculating hypergeometric constants to billions of decimal places. He is associated with the Caramel project to develop efficient arithmetic in the general context and in general in the context of algebraic curves of small genus. He's also interested in computational number theory. In particular, he has contributed to some of the record computations in integer factorizations and discrete logarithm. He has been an active developer of the GNP ECM implementation of the elliptic curve method for integer factorization and of MPFR, an arbitrary precision floating point library with correct rounding. He's also a co-author of the CADO NFS software tool, which was used to factor RSA 240 in record time. And I believe today he will speak to us about further records that were achieved in factoring RSA 250. Thank you very much for being a speaker today, Professor Zimmermann. Over to you.
Thank you, Stelios, for the invitation. Can everybody hear me correctly?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so I will present you common work with three colleagues from my team in Nancy, Pierrick Gaudry, Aurore Guilvic, and Emmanuel Thomé. Fabrice Boudot is a colleague from the University of Limoges, and Nadia Henninger is a colleague in the University of San Diego. So I will speak about the latest integer factorization record, which is RSA 250. And I will focus on how the price infrastructure was useful to set up this record. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so RSA is at the heart of what is called public key cryptography. So public key cryptography started in 1976, first with the Diffie-Hellman protocol. And 1 year later was invented the RSA algorithm by the name of its inventors, Rivest, Shamir, and Adleman. So public key cryptography is also called asymmetric cryptography because there are two distinct keys, one public and one private. So the encryption is done with a public key and the decryption is done with a private key. So that's why it's asymmetric. And what is the key of this kind of algorithm is that deducing the private key from the public key is a very hard problem. So there are two hard problems currently. The first one is integer factorization. This is the basis for the RSA crypto system. And another hard problem is a discrete logarithm computation in a finite cyclic group. This is a basis for the Diffie-Hellman crypto system. And, in this talk, I will focus on integer factorization. Yes, thank you. So for integer factorization, it is based on the RSA crypto system. So I will remind you how the RSA crypto system works. So you have two people, Alice and Bob, who want to exchange some message. So first, Alice has to choose some public parameters. So she first chooses two large prime numbers, P and Q. She multiplies them to get the modulus n, and she chooses an encryption key, small e. And the decryption key, D, is simply the modular inverse of E modulo the product P minus 1, Q minus 1. So in this setting, so P, Q, and D are kept secret, and capital N and E are public. On his side, Bob, yes, next. Yes, so Bob gets the public key NE from Alice. So if he wants to send a private message, say M to Alice, so he will first encode M as an integer between 0 and n-1. So you can choose whatever way to encode the message. Then the ciphertext will be simply M, which is an integer, to the power E modulo n. So recall that E and M are public. So anybody can compute the ciphertext from the private message M. And then he sends C to Alice. On her side, Alice gets C from Bob, and then she simply computes C to the power D mod n. And this gives the original message M. So why does it work? It works because M to the power E times D is M modulo n. So for any integer between 0 and n-1, if you take the power ed of this integer, you get the integer itself. This is because E times D is the order of the multiplicative group modulo n. Okay. So what is the security of this algorithm? So the security relies on the hardness of computing the secret exponent D from N and E. And to compute D, you have to compute the inverse of E modulo the product P-1, Q-1. Thus, you have to know P and Q. Thus, you have to factor N. So the security relies on the hardness of integer factorization. This algorithm RSA is used everywhere. For example, in the SSH keygen algorithm to generate SSH private key under Linux, in the PGP software, in Thunderbird or ProtonMail. You have to know that you should not use too short keys because, for example, if you want to choose a 512-bit key, the SSH keygen will reject it because this kind of key is too easy to factor. Key has been factored in the last century. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what I will explain in this talk is how we did factor this number of 250 decimal digits, or 829 bits. So for this, we use mainly the Price Juver supercomputer, which is composed on, so the processors has Intel Platinum 8168 at 2.7 gigahertz. Next slide. So how can you factor an integer? The first, the easiest algorithm is trial division. So you try to divide your number by some prime numbers and until the division is exact. So this works for prime numbers less than, say, 10 million. Then you have the elliptic curve method. This method is useful to find medium-sized factors. So by medium size, it can mean several dozen of digits. The current record for the ECM method is a prime number of 83 digits. So this is rather large. Then you have the quadratic sieve, sorry. This is the best algorithm if your modulus n has up to 100 decimal digits. And beyond that, you have to use a number fit sieve, which is for n larger than 100 decimal digits, but of course, this is, so the current record is only 250 digits. Next slide. Some history about integer factorization. In 1975, the continued fraction method, CFRAC, was invented, and it was used to factor the number 2 to the 128 plus 1. So this is a Fermat number. Then in 1982, the quadratic sieve was invented by Pomerance. The ACM method was invented 5 years later. And again, 6 years later, what is called the general number field sieve was invented. Next slide. This is a graph about the different factorization records with NFS. So in the abscissa, you have the years, and in the y-axis, you have the number of bits on the left and the number of decimal digits on the right. So you see the last record is on the right, yes, here. And what is funny is that I've participated in the last 3 records. So the 2010 record of 708 bits, on the last 2 of RSA 240 and 250. Next slide. Okay, so the number field sieve. So I will not go into details because this would need a very long talk. But you can find details in some papers, in some technical papers if you want. I will only give a sketch of this algorithm. So this was algorithm in the 90s. And the main idea of the algorithm is to reduce the size of the numbers to be factored. So in fact, to factor a large number n, we have to factor many smaller numbers. And if those smaller numbers are very small, then this becomes rather easy. Okay, so there are several ways to reduce the size of the numbers to be factors. In the number field sieve, there are 2 main steps which are very time consuming. The first one is collecting a relation. So this is where we have to factor many numbers. And the second one is solving a large sparse system. Next slide. Okay, so what are the key ID in NFS? So for example, we can choose we first choose a degree D, say D equals 6 in our case. Then you choose an integer m near from the dth root of your number n that you want to factor. Then you decompose n in basis m, okay, with n equals C0 plus C1m plus CD m to the d. So here all the C I coefficients have size roughly the same of that of m. Then you define a polynomial by replacing m by x in the above equation. So you have a polynomial in x. And you see that if you replace x by m, you get that f1 of m is 0 modulo n, of course. Then you define another polynomial, x minus m. And you see that f0 of equals x minus m, and you see that f0 of m is 0 modulo n2. So those 2 polynomials have a root m modulo n. So they share a common root. So this is the basic of the NFS algorithm. And then we will find some values such that both polynomials, when you replace x by some rational number, so you want that they factor into small numbers. So then if F1 is irreducible, we define a root of F1. If F1 is not irreducible, then you are lucky because you have found a factor, then the polynomial F1 will factor into, say, 2 polynomials. But then if you replace x by m in those 2 polynomials, you will find the root of n. You will find factors of n, so you are done. So in general, F1 is not irreducible. So then we define a map from the z of alpha to the integers modulo n. So here comes the notion of ideal. And we define a ring homomorphism. So on one side, we have to factor in Z, and in the other side, we have to factor in the ring, in the ideal ring. Next slide. Yes. Sorry, if you can go to the previous slide. So you see that the size of the integers that are involved. On the right side, the size is some constant a times n to the 1 over d. And on the left side, the size is a constant a to the d times n to the 1 over d. So there is a trade-off between choosing a large degree d, which will decrease the n to the power 1 over d factor, but it will increase the a to the d factor. So the trade-off for the current records is to choose d equals 6. Okay, next slide. Okay, so here is a sketch of the different steps of the NFS algorithm. So the polynomial selection is what I described in the previous slide. So find 2 irreducible polynomials sharing a common root modulo n. In the relation collection step, we compute many smooth relations. So from the polynomials we found in the first step, we replace the variable with rational numbers. And then we try to factor the different rational numbers we get. And if some are smooth, and they define relations. In the linear algebra step, we have to solve a very large sparse matrix over F2. So this is a matrix with a million or even billions of entries, but whose coefficients are only 0 or 1. And in each row, you have only, say, 100 non-zero numbers. Once the linear algebra step is done, there is a character step. Then we want to find a combinations of the vectors of the kernel of the matrix, which leads us to an equality x squared equals y squared modulo n. And from that equality, we compute x and y in the square root step. And finally, we compute the GCD of x minus 1 and n. So sometimes the value x and y are equal, modulo n, so we are unlucky. But at least with probability 50%, we get different values x and y. And then the GCD in the last step yields a non-trivial factor of n. Yes, next slide. Okay, so this is, here you can see the factors P and Q of the RSA 250 that we found. So you see that both have the same size. So they both have 125 digits. Okay, next slide. Okay, so why break a new integer factorization record? The first thing is that those record computations are used for key size recommendations. So there are different agencies for governmental agencies. For example, in France, it's ANSSI. In the United States, is a NIST, and those agencies they recommend some key size. So they give some lower bounds for the key size given your application, the time for which you want your secret to be kept, and so on. Okay, so they use this kind of record computations. We also wanted to use an open source software. Here we used K1FS, which is a software we developed in our team. Breaking a new record is also a good motivation to improve the different steps of the algorithm, both theoretically and also for the implementation in K1FS. There are some folklore IDs that are only competitive for huge sizes. If you test those IDs for, say, a smaller number, they will not be interesting. But for huge sizes, they become to be interesting. So that's also interesting. It's also an opportunity to exploit some improvements in the sub-steps of the algorithm. For example, in this case, we have tested an improvement in the ECM substep, which was developed by some colleagues, Cyril Bouvier and Laurent Humbert. And last but not least, scaling the code for larger sizes improve the running time on smaller sizes. Okay, thank you. Next slide. So we use the K1FS software. So this is a software we developed in our team mainly since 2007. It consists today of more than 250,000 lines of C and C++ code. And for the relation collection steps, you already have 60,000 lines of code. We did some significant improvements since about 5 years. Mainly, we improved the parallelism. So for example, for the relation collection, you can run the program on a computer with, say, 64 threads, or 64 cores. And then it is important that all 64 cores are used 100% of the time. And I will show you that later. We also improve the versatility of the program with improving the freedom in the parameter selection. There are many parameters in the algorithm, in the NFS algorithm, sorry. And also we improved the prediction of the behavior on yield. This is essential for tuning. So I will give you some figures at the end of the size of the matrices, of the time for the different steps. And it is very important when you choose the parameters to be able to predict the time that will be taken by the relation collection, the time that will be taken by the linear algebra, and so on, to choose the best set of parameters. So it's also an open source project with an open development model. So we are currently on GitLab. And our results can also be reproduced. So if you look at our scientific paper, you will see that at the very end, we have put a new URL where you can, where we describe all the steps we have done. So you can really reproduce our computation, of course, assuming you have enough computing power. Okay, next slide. Okay, so for this factorization, here are the polynomials we use, f1 of f0. So we see that we use a degree 6 parameter, a degree 6 polynomial f1 and a linear polynomial f0. And the resultant of the two polynomials is 48 times the n, where n is RSA 215. So you see the polynomials have a special shape. So this is the kind of shape you find in every record factorization. Yes, next slide. So this slide is just to give you an idea of what we call a relation. So each line corresponds to a relation. On the left, you have a factorization for the F0 polynomial, so for the linear polynomial. On the right, you have the factorization for the degree 6 polynomial. And you see there are some numbers, so all the numbers are primes. You have some primes that are in black, so they are called small primes. You see that those small primes are rather big. Then you have some red primes, so they are called the large primes. And you have some special Q primes, so those appear only for the degree 6 polynomial. So the small primes, there are many small primes, and they will lead to dense columns in the matrix. On the large primes in red, so they are rare. You have maybe only a dozen of those in the matrix, in the whole matrix for each one. And so we try to eliminate them in the linear algebra phase. Next slide. Yes, so before the linear algebra, we have a filtering step. So this is a pre-linear algebra step, some kind of preconditioning. And the idea is to combine different relations to eliminate the large primes, the right primes. And this will lead to a smaller matrix. Yes, next slide. Sorry. Okay, so this is this is a result of the htop command during the relation collection. So this is on a machine with 64 cores, and you see that all the 64 cores are used at 100%. And you see also that the memory is almost at 100%. So we used 170 gigabytes with a total of 188. Okay, so this is the ideal situation where we use the whole machine. So for each processor, we use the whole number of cores at 100%. Okay, next slide now. Okay, here are some figures about this factorization. So the polynomial selection did take 130 core years. So by a core year, we mean using a core for 1 year. Okay. So the degrees of the polynomials, they are 1 and 6. The relation collection, which is the most time consuming, did take 2,450 core years. And you see the number of relations we have collected is a little less than 9 billion. And among those, we add about 6 billion unique relations. So because some relations are produced by several times, so we have to remove duplicate relations. The filtering step did take some days. And after what is called the singleton removal, we obtained a matrix of dimension about 3 billion. And after what is called the click removal, another matrix of a little less than 2 billion. And after what is called the merge step, we obtained a final matrix of about 400 million rows on density about 250. So this means that in each line, you have only 250 non-zero numbers. And the non-zero numbers are 1 because this matrix is defined over the finite field GF2. So with only 2 elements, 0 or 1. So the linear algebra did take 250 core years. And the last steps to find the factors did take only a few days. Next slide. Okay, so our PRACE was useful for this computation. First, thanks to PRACE, we had access to many more computers than by our institutes, maybe a factor 10 times more. And even we already have access to lots of computers by our institute, especially we are using, maybe some of you know this, the GRID 500 infrastructure. So we ask and we obtain an allocation of 32 million core hours for the price, from the PRACE infrastructure. A good thing about when you use PRACE is that you have access to very homogeneous processors, operating systems, and compilers. So you just have to tune your program for one processor, and then you can run on many, many of them. It was very useful to have a preparatory access. So preparatory access is something you can ask before you submit a PRACE submission. Then you get access to some clusters. You can ask access to several clusters of the PRACE infrastructure. You can test your software on these different clusters. You can optimize it. And especially, you can estimate the time your application will take on the different clusters. So this will enable you to refine the time, the allocation time you will ask from PRACE. And this is also useful to choose the best cluster from the different PRACE clusters. Also, you get support from the PRACE in journals. This was not very much used in our case, but this can be very useful. Next slide. Okay, here is a slide. We describe what really you should know about PRACE, especially once you have your submission accepted. So the first thing, I already did explain that there are several clusters around Europe. So you first have to choose the one best suited for your particular application and request preparatory access on it. Once your PRACE allocation is accepted, so you get allocated, say, 12 million core hours. Usually it's for 1 year, 1 calendar year. So if it starts on April 1st, it will end on the end of March next year. So your allocation is divided between 12 allocations for each month. And you should spend, say, in this case, 1 million core hours each month. So if you did not spend your full allocation for, say, May, you can still spend it in June, but not later. So if you did not spend the whole May allocation in June, it will be lost. Okay, so this means that you have to start early to your computation. You also have to know that other PRACE users have also large allocations. So you have to submit your jobs early. So you have to submit your job in a queue, and they will start later. So they might take days to start, but once they are submitted, you are in the queue, and they will make progress in the queue. Of course, you have to check regularly the progress of your computation. If there is an error in your script, you might lose millions of core hours, because usually each script will start, say, instances of hundred of jobs on different processors, each one with, say, 100 of cores. And finally, you have to make sure you make full use of each node. If you have a node with 100 cores during 100 hours, then you will be charged 10,000 hours from your allocation, even if your program uses only one core. So you really have to make sure that you use all the cores of each node by your program. So this is very, very useful to check during the preparatory access. Next slide. So what are the take-home messages? The first one is a price summation is rather light. So in our case, our summation was 23 pages. And so if some of you are interested in submitting, I can send you our summation. It can give a major speed up to a big computation. In our case, we could have done our record computation with the computers we had access to, but instead of a few months, it would have taken a few years. So this is really a major speed up. And the last but not least is that all scientific domains are eligible. So the price cluster are not reserved to numerical computations. So discrete mathematics are very welcome. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm ready to answer your questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation today. Your second last slide here, I think, is relevant for all users because we have users in our system too that could see this and implement this. If there's any question for Professor Zimmermann, please raise your hands and ask your questions. Professor Alexandra, please unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, thanks very much for this very interesting talk. Since we are on this page, was the range of architectures provided by Praise also useful for you or not? I mean, they provide machines with GPUs, CPUs. Yeah. Did you find it useful as well, or?
Not for our particular application, because the CADO-NFS software does not use GPUs currently, and it would be rather difficult to use GPUs efficiently compared to other applications.
Yeah, I imagine so, but yeah.
So we only use CPUs.
Okay, so does this mean with the pre-exascale machines, such applications will not be? I mean, okay, I don't know what all the pre-exascale machines would be, but LUMI, for example, is going to be AMD GPU based. Would that be something to?
So there are different clusters. So some have mostly CPUs, and some have many GPUs. So depending on your particular application, you have to choose the one which better fits to your application. And yeah. You have to try this in the preparatory access phase.
Sure. But yeah, okay.
Most of the new systems of the EuroHPC cores, because they just opened a few days ago, and I was looking at them today, they're AMD CPUs, I think all of them at the moment.
Those are the petascale machines, right?
And LUMI as well.
LUMI, it's
the partition with the partition.
Yeah, they have CPU. A partition. That's correct. Yeah.
So will your software be require any changes with the new processors, if you know?
No, our software runs on AMD processors also. But of course, it will not make use of the GPUs if there are ones.
Yeah. So out of curiosity, I'm not an expert at all in factorization of prime numbers, but out of curiosity, I mean, to make the steps that you showed us, is it a combination of new sort of algorithm and computational power? What is the what makes the the steps that you showed?
Yeah. So you have very nice algorithms. So you have to implement them efficiently. And then you have to find the good parameters for a new record computation. So that's some knowledge we have accumulated in our team since now several years. And this enables us to set up new records.
From what I read in articles, your programming expertise, not yours, obviously yours, but your teams as well, is helped, obviously, to make the code more efficient and to achieve the records.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is this computer science tricks that other scientists might not know?
This is a long expertise indeed, and we have in our team. So we are programming mostly in C and C++. And so what is important is, of course, efficiency. So in this particular case, we have improved the software over the years. And also what is important is to have tools that enable you to measure the efficiency of your software. For example, if I consider if we can go back to the graph with the h-top output, you see that seeing if some cores are not working at full, at 100% is very important. It was later. Still later. Yes, this one. So having such tools to measure the efficiency of your program is very important. And then to obtain this kind of graph, we had several iterations where we did not have a full efficiency, and then we did improve the code until we got this kind of graph.
But do you also use, let's say, loop enrolling in your code and compiler efficiencies to make the code even faster?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course. But I would say maybe this is a particular applications because I think, of course, I don't know, but among the price applications, I guess some people are using software written by other people. Maybe we are an isolated case where we use our own software.
Yeah. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question today? I don't see any more questions, in which case I would like to thank our speaker today. Thank you very much, Professor Zimmermann. We'll look up on your success and hopefully, I would like to ask one more question, sorry. Can you tell us about quantum computing, how that will affect, if it will affect cryptography in the future?
This kind of record, of course, it will affect cryptography in the future. So maybe you know that there is currently, the NIST has started a call for new cryptographic algorithm, what is called a post-quantum algorithm. Because in principle, if you could build a quantum computer, then we could factor such numbers very easily. But my personal opinion is that a quantum computer is not yet ready for such large computations. So nevertheless, currently we know that with the kind of algorithm that already exists, we could in principle factor, say, RSA 1024, which is still used in several applications. So of course, this will force people to increase the key sizes they use in different applications.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. And thank you very much for being our speaker today. We look forward to new records on new systems. Your HPC cores are already out and you can apply for a new record possibly. Thank you all for joining today. Thanks to our speaker today also. And we'll see you again in next week's seminar. Thanks again.
Thank you again for the invitation.
Bye-bye.
Bye.